Hi, everybody. Welcome to Asian Queens in Animation's workshop, first workshop of the year and presentation. We have Sarah. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks so
Um,
much for having me.
yeah, um, this is sort of because it's a smaller group, you're welcome to keep any questions in the chat and you can turn on your camera if you feel comfortable. You can unmute whatever you want. This is like your time to ask questions and to learn. So yeah, I'll pass it along and I hope you learn a lot today because I'm excited. I'll pass it on to you and let me just see, make sure you can share. Okay,
Yeah,
try now.
amazing. Yes, I should be able to start sharing my screen.
Okay, awesome.
Alrighty, thank you so much for the Asian Queens in Animation community for hosting me. I really appreciate seeing these kind of initiatives. And it's initiatives that I myself have benefited a lot from when I was an emerging artist and a student artist as well, trying to figure out, all the different avenues and all the different career paths that someone interested in creative professions can take. So today we're going to be talking about finding your art style and how there's no really such thing as original ideas. And it's something that we should wholly embrace and hold on to when we're dealing with clients, dealing with personal projects, and the whole array of artwork we are capable of producing. So right out the gate, let's just tell you the secret sauce to making an art style. And it is as such. It is your influences, what you enjoy doing, and your brand of laziness. And all of that together, if you remember long form edition from your elementary school years, becomes your art style. And that's it. And if you'd like to unlock more information, you can subscribe to my monthly newsletter that costs $3,000 a month. Or not. You can also just continue to the rest of the presentation. So as I was introduced before, my name is Sarah. If you're unfamiliar with my work, I work in video games, I work in comic books, children's books, and art in writing in all different types of forms has become my career, which is not something that I expected. I did not go into college or leave college expecting any of that to happen. But I'm going to talk a bit about the nitty-gritty of like why I make my creative decisions, and then we can talk a bit more about how that touches professional decisions as we go along. So the start of the formula is influences, and we're going to talk about what exactly that entails. It is everything that you pay attention to, the stuff you like, the stuff you don't like, the stuff that confuses you. It's the people in your life. It's your nostalgia. It's nature and nurture. It's just like we ourselves, our consciousness, without getting too artsy fartsy into it. We are just memory and sensory input, things that come into our little soft tissue brains and stay there for some reason. We don't understand why or how we like or hate the things that we do. We only can document those experiences. This is why early artists try everything, and a very easy to clock sign. Myself as an art director and person who's hired other artists, collaborated with other artists, I can tell you it's extremely easy to know who's earlier in their career because their portfolios are all over the place and they're a little bit of everything. And that's fine. That's a reflection of them, taking in all of their influences and everything they're paying attention to. So the examples you see here, like, this was my first year of college portfolio and things like that. You have your still life and a smattering of digital work. And that one time I tried watercolors. And it's part of the learning process. Cohesion is not the goal here. It's just sensory input and trying whatever you can. When you're collecting these influences, and I will highlight that it is number one, it is step one, because it's a very foundational step towards art style. It's because that's where you're getting all the tools for your toolbox. You gotta borrow cool things people say, copy, a fun line that you heard in a movie, regurgitate the cool things that you read in the last book you saw, pay attention to stuff that, maybe you don't understand and it's a chance to learn. This is all going to sound like really nebulous. You're just like, so just look around me. And the answer is actually yes. Genuinely look outside of art, look outside of what's comfortable to you, and try to hoard as much information as you can. Just be super duper curious about everything. Okay, so now we've collected our mishmash of information that's rattling around our heads, but now comes the filtering. This is actually where your voice develops. This is now I've looked at the world and I've tried to understand it and I've engaged with it curiously. But what am I now bringing back to, my desk? What am I bringing back to my tablet, to my deadlines, to my homework, to my clients, to my commissions, to myself, to my goals? It's time to pick and choose. So you have to focus on what you do actually like, and it should be a wide variety of things. And you should try to really engage and deeply understand what you don't like. For example, if you say like, I hate abstract paintings, I don't get it, I don't like it, you should come to the table knowing why you don't like it. You should come to the table understanding why maybe some other people do like it, because everybody is going through these same 3 steps, whether consciously or unconsciously. They are observing the world and deciding what they want to keep for themselves. And it's helpful to come with that kind of open-minded perspective, to know that everything is somebody's jam. Like, you don't want to yuck somebody else's yum, and you want to always come from a perspective of like, well, why does this work for you and why does it not work for me? Because this is also very helpful for like a business intuition as well. It can be very easy to be like, the Marvel movies suck and, Disney is just churning out garbage. I'm like, yeah, but they are making billions, and it helps to know why. I'm not saying model that path or pursue it or, aspire to it, but it's always helpful to understand who has the biggest reach, why mass appeal exists, why niche appeal exists, and then you'll kind of find out like where you maybe fall into it. Because at the end of the day, illustrators are just communicators, and I urge you to communicate with yourself first. Know what you yourself enjoy. So, for example, in my graphic novel Squire, Squire was a very self-indulgent project for myself. It was my first book, and I was extremely intimidated by the process. I'd never done something so long form. I was brand new to comics, and I only had an inkling of how much work there was to come. So if I was going to be alone at my desk for hours every day for 2 years drawing this book, I damn well have to be drawing something that I actually enjoy and writing a story that I actually enjoy. So architecture and history and Girls with Swords and adventure and color and what I love from, anime styling and what I love from my favorite tropes and pacing and layout. Like, this was everything I had observed in the world. This is everything that I then brought back to my desk and decided this is my special concoction that is going to become my story. So I'm just going to like walk through some examples of my work. And honestly, the only reason I did it is because, again, I like it. And look at your own work and really sit with what you enjoyed about that process. Because when you fill your portfolios with things that you love doing, you're going to always have energy for it. You're always going to have fresh ideas for it. And you're never going to begrudgingly take on a job. So, for example, this is from my upcoming picture book that comes out next month called Not Yet. And, I had just come from drawing a fantasy book. So why would I go into a book that is all about ice skating and, little girls spinning around? Well, it's because I really enjoy expressions. I really enjoy dramatic movements. I love bringing magic to mundane situations. It was a very fun, creative challenge for me. And I learned the skills that I had to make this book possible by observing it, in other media, in other stories, and getting excited for it by observing and then getting excited by creating. So same thing with this poster I had done for the Massachusetts Indie Comics Expo, where they told me very frankly, do whatever you want. And I said, bet. And I had just gone to the zoo the day before. I know that one of my most popular pieces, my most well-received pieces, is of a girl skateboarding with a sword in hand. I really like dynamic action. I love using clouds. So again, this is a love letter to all those things that I knew I already enjoyed, and also a chance to challenge myself and maybe find out something new that I could enjoy. I had not really drawn animals in such a dynamic way before, and that was a really enjoyable challenge. And I had to go and collect new inspiration and new resources to fill up my toolbox. So I got to watch, The Jungle Book, and I got to watch some like early Disney animation to see how they added expression, human-like expression to animals and creatures, and kind of like learn from that already existing, approach to this creative problem. So that is step 2. You really, really can't skip out on step 1, which is finding influences, because then you don't have enough to pull from for step 2. And what you enjoy will be really limited. And honestly, it could be bland. Things will kind of blur together. At the worst case scenario, your influences are not broad enough, and you end up slipping into just being like a watered down version of a creator who might be more talented or more recognizably successful than you. We already have a Bill Watterson. We already have a Rebecca Sugar. We already have, any number of people who you can name from the industries that may have inspired you to start, but we don't need a second version of them. We need something fresh and exciting. And when things filter through you, through your very personal, very specific experience, we're always going to get something new and exciting. So lean into it. And if you find yourself, blocked in your process, if you find yourself you're struggling for excitement, struggling to come up with something that really clicks for you, just return to step 1. It's just like exercise, where a muscle actually grows in rest. Your creative muscles will grow via observation. It's not all about throwing yourself at the problem over and over again and just drawing your way through. Sometimes stepping away and coming back, you'll be surprised how quickly you find a new solution. That brings us to 3, the shortest, most straightforward part of the art style formula. And it comes last for a reason, because you cannot begin with your brand of laziness, but you will always end with your brand of laziness. We could all be Da Vinci, but we don't want to be. We could all sit here and create perfect one-to-one Mona Lisa replicas, but that's not very fun. It's not very interesting to us. And I can imagine the rest of you have much more interesting things to say. So when you take your influences and you funnel it through your interests, that kind of gets you going. That's the fuel to the car. Your laziness is the brakes. So when we talk about what we enjoy and what we don't enjoy, this right here, this special brand of laziness is the thing that, allows us to know that a project is complete to our satisfaction, because we are the first people to, we're the first audience. We're the first people to literally look at any image we create with our own eyeballs, because we're there for it and no one else is. So comics and publishing in particular, and I would extend this as well to animation, they are long form efforts. They're very high effort. And if you put 100% effort, if you give your Mona Lisa every single time you do a frame or a page, it's logistically impossible. You will die. And that's honestly a common mistake that you see with anyone who is an emerging artist or new to starting like a long form project is they go a little too hard, a little too soon, and they burn out, you know? Like I've done a whole number of portfolio reviews where the first 3 pages of someone's 10-page short comic story are full of fabulous, environments and illustrations and characters and every kind of perspective. But then all of a sudden, I'm just looking at talking heads. And I'm like, I can see that you've lost steam. And that doesn't work for your story, even if that's what happened to you. So it's all about making your 60% effort good enough. So where you cut corners, where you crop, where you use panel layouts to prioritize story above all else, like that's just what a good storyteller does. If I showed you a collection of the most high resolution, dynamic, edited photographs in the whole world, even that you're gonna be tired of. Like you can't have a Michelin star meal every day. It's not even a good experience. So the same way it comes with creating. It's literally impossible to deliver that experience. And on top of that, a good storyteller does not do that. So for example, in this chase scene that I have in Squire, I have, this character who's in a very stressful situation. Someone is pursuing them. They don't know what direction they're coming in from. You have the establishing shot, and then you crop in on the details, and then you have one more establishing shot, and then you crop in on the face again. Because the story isn't look at how well I can draw a guy running through a forest. The story is look at how stressful this situation is. And that is why I bring in this conversation of laziness, right? Your special brand of laziness will determine, actually, I don't want to draw a full forest in every single panel. Then your storyteller brain comes on and says, well, what am I trying to emphasize here if I'm not going to emphasize a full forest background? Well, I want to emphasize the character's feelings. And then from there, you start making, very smart story-driven choices. So you don't need to prove to me you can draw in every single frame or panel or project. I believe you. So some examples of like where I was lazy. So for the right hand girl with a sword on a skateboard image is one of my most viral to this day best-selling pieces. No matter where I bring it to a convention, to this day it still sells, even though it's like 5 years old by now. It is not my it's not technically my strongest piece. The lines are very rough and sketchy. I can definitely do better backgrounds than that. But you know what? The story is there. The character design is there. The composition is there. And those things don't take a lot of time to whip out because I already have them in my little brain toolbox. So it's an example of like high effort will not always lead you to the best answer. So on the left-hand side, I have a piece that I did literally a week ago for Scholastic. An editor I work very regularly with, Scholastic, hit me up and he's like, hey, I need a magazine cover. It's going to have XYZ, go crazy. And there was a part of me that wanted to draw the perspective of an entire neighborhood from top-down view and all of these very complicated lighting decisions as these sprinkles become stars in the sky. And then I sketched it. And I was like, shit, that's gonna be really hard. And I only got a week to do this, and it's average pay. It's not the best paying project I've ever had. It's not the worst paying project I ever had. So I was like, let me put on my business brain and my laziness goggles and my influences in my backpack. And I'm like getting myself mentally prepared for what is the right decision for this gig? What is the right decision for this story? And it was doing something more straightforward. I was drawing for kids. I had to remember expressions are important. Characters have to be the focal point. The art director asked me to emphasize color. The art director asked me to emphasize a space where he can put in a title. And so the lazier decision was actually the correct one. I got no revisions on this. I was done in the span of like 5 back and forth emails. So yeah, the special brand of laziness is important and essential, and it comes last for a reason, because I don't want you to feel limited before you even start. You have to look at the world as if you have infinite resources. And then you have to look at your art as if you have infinite joy. But then when reality kicks in, we still come in with some level of optimism and realism, because we are all going to be limited by time or money or resources or location or physical or mental ability and our own interests and our own capacity for dullness and, rote tasks. And I really, really emphasize this to every artist who's, no matter what point of their career, whether they're trying to get their first gig or they're on their 1,000th gig, you are responsible for your own boredom. No one else in the whole world can make this job interesting for you except for you. And of course, that's the goal, right? Like, we're a bunch of creatives. We went into this because we like this stuff. And so you need to protect that joy, because it's very difficult to be creative if you hate what you're doing. And it's very difficult to come up with ideas if it's nothing more than a job. And that's not to say that those situations won't happen. Sometimes you get the check for the sake of the check. But you can do your best to set yourself up for success by making sure your portfolio is full of really passionate, well thought out, strong storytelling examples that ideally follow some version of this formula. That is kind of like my own approach to my creative profession. It's worked very well for me, I have to say. And I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. And if even, a tiny smidge of this helps reframe maybe your approach to your creative work, I'm really hopeful and thankful that I could be part of that process. And yeah, that is kind of the presentation that I had ready. And I'm down to open this up to questions. And I put in some like frequently asked questions as well. Do I have access to the chat? If anyone is talking in chat, I cannot see it currently, and I'm not sure why. There we go. Thanks so much. Yeah, you guys are so welcome.
Ooh, I have a question. Do you like to create mood boards on Pinterest?
I do it hesitantly. So I really like Pinterest because of the ease of the UI and very quickly collecting resources. I consider it more as part of like the step one. I do it when I have a goal in mind. So for example, when a client comes to me and says like, hey, I would love a JRPG inspired cover for this book about Final Fantasy, for example. I want to know what already exists out there so that I can come with something new. And maybe I can also understand what are some expectations for those tropes. So for example, when I drew the cover of a book called Sword Fight Magic or Fight Magic Item, I forget what it was called. I had to go and do a lot of research on JRPG visual tropes. I wanted to see what game covers are out there because I'm talking to a very specific audience. And Pinterest helps me see what that very specific audience already knows and already likes. And then from there, I can add my own little subtle twist. My problem with Pinterest is that very quickly can send you, it doesn't really diversify your interests, it more narrows in. And I know I've been on Pinterest for too long when it starts showing me my own art to me. Like, that's how I know I'm like, oh, I really need to reset and rethink like how I'm gonna approach this because I'm too close to what I already know. And that's not new information. But I do like it as a platform. I use it to organize references for like books and stuff. Like, I have a Pinterest board for every single chapter of Squire to help me organize like lighting references, architecture examples. Like they're all very specific questions that I'm answering in there.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And anyone else, feel free to hop in chat or in voice if you have any questions about that. Totally fine if not.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions.
In the chat, we have Leah, you talked a little bit about avoiding burnout and taking your limits into account. Do you have any advice for getting back into the creative process after burnout? Yeah, it's step one. It's getting excited. It's getting that inspiration. It's taking the pressure off of creating. Like literally ditch your sketchbook, ditch your, notebooks, and just go do something really new. The example for me, for example, was I would just go out into parks and I would just like people watch. I would get myself a little latte and I would just go out on a nice day and just eavesdrop on people's conversations. I would, watch a show that is totally different from my usual taste. Like I got into reality television as just a palate cleanser. I took like, if I'm on a trip, whenever I go on vacations, I do not bring my sketchbook. I do not bring my notebook. I take photos or I engage in a medium that is very different from what I normally do. When I was at the worst of my burnout, I signed up for ceramics classes. I was like, I would love to be just dog shit at something for a while. I would like no pressure to be good at anything. And that was super helpful. Like return to that first step, that look at the world with baby eyes, allow yourself to be bad at something else that stretches a creative muscle. That isn't the thing that's putting the most pressure on you. Like the only reason I even was able to get the energy to work on a new book is because I was going to get a chance to do something so wildly and totally different. Like I was no longer staring endlessly at references of Ottoman Empire architecture and miniature paintings. I was now looking at ice skaters and I was looking at animations of dancers and trying to learn from them. So switch gears, go 180 in a totally different perspective.
Does anyone else have any other questions? We do have another question.
Yep. How do you juggle freelance work and long projects and not burn out? Poorly. I didn't say I didn't burn out. So I work full time at my company. One More Multiverse, we are a video game company. And at my video game company, I do not draw. I am not in charge of drawing. I am head of marketing. I occasionally fill in art direction and stuff, but I've now passed on that role to another team member. So the creative work I do full time is not the creative work that I do in my free time. So similar to how I answered Leah's question, I fully switch gears. So by the time I'm done with my work week, I am now doing like drawing, and drawing is a very different part of my brain than like marketing content and art direction and things like that. I am now the person actually sitting down and doing the work. It took me a long time to understand my limits, to be honest. And that's not something I can really answer for you. But your health is very serious. Sleep is very serious. Take that into account. And when you are pulling those long hours for a long time, like I don't know if I'll say the mistake, but I went through a process the last year where I kept saying, what's a Saturday? What's a weekend or something? Because I kept accepting freelance work on top of my full-time job, on top of, debuting books, where I was like, but I can finish this in a couple weekends. I can do an illustration. I'm a very fast artist. I'm a very fast artist at this point after drawing all these books. But even then, I ended up not having a full weekend for like over 2 calendar years. I took like a couple small vacations, but even then I was like answering emails if I wasn't I was never fully offline. And it came at a cost. So I had to learn very quickly, this is not sustainable. And you set up systems of accountability. So for example, if you say I'm dedicating 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. every Saturday to my new Kickstarter project that I am working on, and I have these goals, stick to it. Don't work, the 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. hours after your day job. Try to tackle it the same way you would a full-time job, where it has its day, it has its specific hours. You don't think about it and you don't work on it outside of those hours to the best of your ability. So I would try to suggest taking that very, very disciplined route, and see what works for you. And, slow down if you have the ability to slow down. I understand everyone has different circumstances for how many gigs they need to take on in order to make ends meet. But you won't be able to take on anything if you are sick and absolutely mentally exhausted and physically exhausted. I'm someone who's gone through carpal tunnel because I didn't learn my lesson in my last year of college, and I did too many things. I also want to remind people, like, if you are drawing all day, typing afterwards is not resting. Just because you're not drawing doesn't mean you're not resting. Remember, we use our hands for everything. So if you are if you're logging in drawing hours for like 13 hours a day, and then you still have all of your life things to do, your chores, your emails, your phone calls, all of that stuff, so going to see friends, you're still using these. So be mindful of when you are genuinely at rest. I hope that long-winded answer helped. If you're going to pick a project, do different projects. If you're going to do different projects, be disciplined. And if you're going to be disciplined, listen to your body. I think that's the answer. I could have said it in 10 seconds. Yeah. Other things I am happy to talk about that might be relevant to this crowd's interests is I am always happy to share pricing on anything that I've worked on, anything I've done. I'm very transparent about it. I can talk about, getting an agent. I can talk about, art as a business, since I've done startups, I've done Kickstarters, I've done a lot of like crowdfunded work. I've applied for grants. I've run the gamut. I've been on these streets. Sada, what's your favorite medium to work in, digital or analog? I like doing, now I understand what you're saying, analog being the right word or not. I like doing thumbnails. So this is like the conceptual phase of like, let me literally write down the most simple concepts. So for example, Scholastic calls me up and they're like, hey, we want a girl who is like opening a box of donuts and light will shine from the donuts. Figure it out. I'm like, okay, well, let's, I have to emphasize the girl and I have to emphasize the donuts and I have to emphasize the light. So what are some scenarios? What are some environments? What are some illustrations and compositions that could help me figure that out? So I pull out either like a ratty sketchbook or like an old piece of mail or the cheapest printer paper, and just a normal, like push mechanical pencil where I like broke off the little tip thing. And I do not focus on drawing good ideas. I just focus on getting them down and making sure that everything fits into the frame that they want me to put the illustration into. So there's no pressure to make good art. There's no pressure to be a perfectionist at the start. And then everything is done on my tablet digitally. I almost exclusively, no, I just exclusively work digitally. I've never even delivered anything traditionally as like final art, unless it was like, I worked on a mural once and that was kind of it. Digital is the way of the world. It's a necessary skill set if you're going to go into commercial illustration, I would say. I'm not saying it's impossible to do it otherwise. It's just kind of the expectation. And if you are working in traditional media, you're going to need to transfer it into like a digital format very effectively, work in layers the way that someone would expect Photoshop layers to work in. One of the reasons why I am a return hire for a lot of my publishing companies is because I work in a way that allows them to make any tweaks on their end. They don't even have to go through me to make changes. That's easier on me and it's easier for them. And that's because I divide up my Photoshop files in a way that is very easy to understand. And that might be more difficult if you're working traditionally. So yeah, sketches, concepts are done in the cheapest paper so I can take off the pressure, and finals are always digital. You're so welcome.
If anyone has any other questions, this is your time to ask. If not, we will wrap up soon.
Yeah, of course.
But thank you. This was so informative, and I'm excited to see your what you publish in
Yeah.
February.
So my picture book, let me see. I'm gonna open up that screen again. So my upcoming picture book, Not Yet, is going to be coming out. It is my first picture book, which I'm very excited about. And you can get it anywhere books are sold. It is about a young girl who lives in the United Arab Emirates, and she wants desperately to copy a movie that she watched. She goes and sees a movie in the theaters and then is like, I want to do that too. And I want to become an ice skater. And everyone in her life is like, no, what if you don't? And she's like, well, what if I do? And it's a very universal story in that way. One of the co-authors, this is her real story, and the other co-author was the person who wrote the script for that movie that inspired her to become an ice skater. So it is loosely based off of her real childhood as she then went off to compete, be the first person to compete internationally in hijab as an ice skater. And now she owns and is the president of like the International Skating Federation in the Middle East. So that's really cool. It was a lot of fun to draw the story. So if you got a kiddo in your life who is starting something new, maybe starting a new sport or a new project, this is definitely a nice story to bring to them, to kind of let them know, like, yes, things are hard to start. Yes, people won't believe in you. And sometimes it hurts the most because it comes from the people we love the most. But if you keep pushing and you persevere, you realize that all no's are just not yets.
So exciting. Well,
Yeah.
I don't think anyone else has any other questions. Last call. Anyone have any questions?
And if you do come up with a question that is more specific to your career path, your personal creative, I guess, pursuits, feel free to email me. You can reach me on my website, sarah-alpha.com. I'm always happy to answer emails from emerging creators, and even people who are already, established as well, because everybody comes to a crossroads at one point or another in their path. So if you'd like another perspective or, have any questions of how I pursued certain projects, feel free to hit me up.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and thank you, Sarah, for giving us your morning and this beautiful, informative presentation. And yeah, I see a couple comments. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, so happy to be here. So happy to join you guys this Saturday morning. I hope you have a good rest of your weekend.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.